Today's World Insight. On the eve of China's yearly political gatherings, the two sessions, we get the ball rolling with a prominent member of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, a state investment fund executive, Zhang Yichen, the chairman and CEO of CITIC Capital Holdings. He talks about the nation's economic rebound, green targets, and proposals in this year's session.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. China's annual political season kicks off this weekend, so we will keep you updated on the meeting of the NPC, that's the National People's Congress, and the CPPCC, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. I will stay on top of these meetings this year from inside the Great Hall of the People and update you about the ongoing discussions, the key priorities in our annual special program, Two Sessions with Tian Wei. This year, though, we will focus on not only the NPC deputies and CPPCC members' policy proposals and ideas, but even more importantly, their actions, their very deeds, to make things happen despite challenging circumstances. All that in our special interview series, Actions Count. Actions speak louder than words. During China's annual political season this year, I want to take you to meet them, who believe in the greater good and who practice what they preach. Join me, Two Sessions with Tian Wei on World Insight. Today, our focus is on nurturing recovery through structural changes in the economy. That's an exciting focus for Zhang Yichen, a CPPCC member who's also the chairman and CEO of CITIC Capital Holdings Limited. As an important shareholder of a fast food chain in China, Zhang is leading his team to turn Asia's first zero-carbon restaurant into reality. I visited the restaurant in Beijing to figure out myself how green dreams could come true. Let's go. Everything's DIY, pedaling a bike to generate electricity and get your own phone recharged.
Well, we're actually generating electricity. Yeah, as you can see, it's light up.
Oh, right.
And very soon, then it will go up.
Okay. So yeah. When we have the light all lightened up, then we will have our batteries charged?
Yeah, absolutely. You just keep going and the phone will light up.
This is fun.
This is hard work. So
I really wonder how long it would take for all of us to get 100% charged. More time than you can. I mean more time than eating a pack of French fries. I see. All right. So this is very healthy. Though it might take me hours to fully recharge my phone by stepping on these bikes, the restaurant is totally self-reliant when it comes to electricity. Every year, it generates 330,000 kilowatt hours. How? The answer is on the top floor, 2,000 square meters of solar panels. Whether during rainy days or shiny days, the restaurant also works with its local grid to make the practice sustainable.
These are the solar panels that power this restaurant.
So it's on the roof everywhere?
Yeah, everywhere, including the car park.
Yes, overlooking the Olympic Park.
Yes, absolutely. That's the famous ski jump. This is where Eileen Gu got her first gold.
So, first, zero carbon restaurant. Very, very impressive.
It is very impressive indeed.
Did you have fun every time coming over here?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You know, I understand there are 85 delegates and representatives this time during the two sessions that are coming from environment-related areas. For businesses, how the business model is likely to be rebuilt as a result of low-carbon and zero-carbon practices.
Well, we are an investment firm, so we are trying to adopt all the ESG and low carbon, carbon neutral principles into our investments. For example, at our own company level, CITIC Capital, with our subsidiary TrustStar Capital, we'll become the first carbon neutral private equity firm in China. And then we have also, in our investments, have been gradually shifting towards the ESG and the environmentally friendly companies. And then we have also invested in many other companies that's also making similar efforts. For example, one of the portfolio companies we have, which specializes in industrial and commercial facility management, and one of the key value add when they take on a new site is to use solar panels and so on and so forth to provide renewable energy service to these facilities in the process of transforming energy usage and all that. And we have also invested in another company called Intramco, which manufactures electric vehicle charging cables and so on and so forth. So the focus of our investment is shifting more towards environmentally friendly type of companies. And once we take control, we try to implement a lot of these policies.
I've been hearing from people try to provide more electricity through solar energy and other means. How to make sure the electricity they generated will be able to get into the national network?
In terms of smoothing overall sort of policy change, for example, there is another initiative that I'm sponsoring during this year's 2 sessions. One of the initiatives I'm sponsoring is trying to create a national policy framework on biodiesel fuel. Mostly because China basically creates roughly about 5 to 7 million tons of spent cooking oil, and but only about 20% of that is actually turned into biodiesel fuel. A lot of it is due to simple sort of inefficiency in the system, and due to there is lack of national coordination. So many local governments create their own policy framework. So there are local small businesses that lack scale, and but it essentially become a local monopoly, which is not conducive to the overall efficient use of these fuels. For us, we would like to see a more coherent national policy to turn these used oil into biofuels, which in the process will reduce carbon emission.
How to once again smooth up and make sure it is a big chess, a national chess, rather than every localities have their own versions of policies.
Well, we're going to make suggestions. I'm going to sponsor this particular initiative. Well, for example, last year I sponsored an initiative asking for the government to expand the carbon trading policy, carbon trading market. At this point, it's a very limited market. Carbon trading is only restricted to power producers.
In China
so far. And that is why in that carbon trading market, carbon trading exchange is only around 50 RMB per ton versus well over 50 euros in Europe per ton. So clearly this is enterprised. And I actually believe if you introduce more entities into that exchange, for example, if you expand that to include financial players and other enterprises, they may want to buy more carbon credit so that they can achieve carbon neutrality, or to lower their overall carbon emission.
Were you excited when they responded to you positively about your proposal?
Well, so far, honestly, each year I sponsor on average about 7 or 8 initiatives. I've always gotten, fairly positive responses. It may not, be implemented the very next year, but over time, I have clearly seen progress. I mean, that is why I continue to serve on the CPPCC. This is my 4th term. So by the completion of this 1st term, I'll be doing this for 20 years, which is a long time.
How fast could China's economy recover? What needs to be done to make sure it recovers with better quality and potential amid complex conditions? These will be intensely discussed by Zhang Yichen and his peers at the annual political meeting. But Zhang suggested there are positive signs already. Even by just looking at the tourist arrivals at the Shougang Industrial Park every day, one could already get a pretty good idea.
I'm always amazed every time I'm here. They have turned this heavily polluted industrial park into such a beautiful spot.
Right, and this is totally different from the earlier days.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This is not just turning into an innovation park, it's turning into a tourist spot. I mean, our restaurant is full of people on weekends.
So consumption up.
Definitely, definitely.
Structural reform is certainly one of the important tasks for China's economy, but we are seeing worldwide economies are suffering as a result of poly crisis. So how much is still a priority for China?
I think this year we can all feel that economic growth is the central focus of the government and everybody else. And from the central government perspective, the focus this year is mainly on first, I think stabilizing expectations. Second is try to boost confidence. So we have seen many measures to boost confidence, for example, stabilizing the real estate sector, so new initiatives are being put in place, and the third is overall stimulate domestic consumption. I think we all know fundamentally China has to transform into a consumption-driven economy. Now, with zero COVID policy, lifted, we have seen a very quick rebound. That overall, I think the focus on economic development is definitely back.
We have seen over the past quarter, last quarter of 2022, policies already setting in. For example, regarding the financing, 16 new policies, and the list goes on. But how much of it do you see is sophisticated, designed, and likely to be sophisticatedly implemented so that the real estate sector, as you mentioned, will not go with a pendulum as we have seen in some earlier years?
Any policy adjustment will have a major impact. I think right now is in terms of financing for the property sector is being stabilized. So the completion of pre-sold properties is being supported by the banking sector. So in the short term, I think the sector should be okay at a reduced rate. But in the longer term, we do have the issue, which is demand may take more time to recover.
And of course, this year you specifically proposed something related to the funding of the real estate sector. Tell me more about that. Why is it important?
Well, in past couple years, I have always sponsored an initiative on including commercial real estate into these infrastructure publicly traded REITs in China, mostly because commercial real estate should be considered as the basic infrastructure for commerce, for consumption in cities. The government's desire to stem out speculation in residential sector is absolutely the right policy, but the restrictions should not be expanded to include commercial real estate. I think many property developers in China are actual asset holders in commercial property as well. Now, given how cash-strapped they are, and a lot of them actually lack funding to complete the residential project they have already sold. They have pre-sold.
Right.
So,
which is many of the social problems
that's
are.
Right. In order to address that, I think the right thing to do is to allow them to, put their commercial real estate up as being included in the public traded rates, and that way they can get some liquidity from these good assets, right. and the proceeds should be used to fund the completion of these residential properties.
What about local government debts? Many suggest that it has a lot to do with the real estate development and the kind of real estate projects that they were trying to provide support for. So what would be able to solve that problem?
The local government finance
for the
is
real
overly
estate.
Dependent on land sales. And that, in the long run, is not sustainable. As the property sector goes down, plunges over the last year, we clearly see a rapid deterioration of the local finances. Now, to address that, I think that we need many reforms. First, this is overall fiscal system reform in terms of how local government can ultimately fund themselves. What shares of tax revenue they could collect. And second, I think the government's been talking about implementing a real estate tax, a property tax, which is normal in almost every other country.
But very controversial in China.
Honestly, at some point it has to be done. But fundamentally, local governments in China are considered branches of the central government. They are not independent entities of their own. So in some ways, the overall financial conditions for China, physical condition, is still very good because central government is not heavily indebted. So I think there's a way of addressing that problem without triggering a crisis.
And my final question. Things are changing very fast. I'm sure as an investor you have the first-hand observation than most of us in the world. What to you, as an investor, are the best ways to observe China and look at China, its relations with the rest of the world, and be able to come to my own investment plan regarding China?
Well, is this, you have to fundamentally believe, which I do, is that China will continue on its path of economic growth. And China will continue its current policy on opening up. Once you have those fundamental beliefs, now clearly there is more geopolitical tension, there are many other disruptions, and there may be here and then regulatory changes as well. But fundamentally, we have always tried to do the right thing in the sense that, for example, we have always focused on the mainstream sectors in China, sectors that's not controversial. So we avoided some of the sectors that, although growing extremely fast, but may be in somewhat of a gray area between government regulation and market forces. So that's how domestically how we fundamentally adjust. At the same time, even internationally, like it or not, we are in a globalized world, and we have to try to work with each other, live with each other, and trade with each other. So from that perspective, we try to stick to sectors that's more focused on development, less on security, and so as not to arouse more suspicion. Like it or not, unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and we try to adjust. but the fundamental growth potential is still intact in China.
Mr. Zhang, as always, thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure.
And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of my team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.